Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnanam Janashalakaya Chakshudimilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nam Shreshtham Manumapi Satriputram Atra Sharupam Rupam Tasya Grajamuru Purim Mathirim Gashtavatim Radha Kundam Gidivaram Mahu Radhik Madhava Samprapto Yasya Pratitha Gripaya Shri Gurum Tamnatasmi Vancha Kalpataru Vyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Nikhila Shruti Mali Ratnamala Diti Nirajita Patapankajanta Haji Mukta Kulairupasyamanam Paritastam Harinam Samshrayami Anarpitachirim Chirat Karunayavatirunakalam Shamar Paitamunnatachvalarasam Svabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dyuti Kadamba Sandipita Sada Hridaye Khandare Spurato Bhasachinandana Ajanalambita bhujjo khanakavadatu Sankirtanaikapitaro kamalaya takshu Vishwambaro dvijavaro jugadharma palo Andi jagat priyakaro karunavataro Ladini shakti sarupaya gauranga suridaya cha Bhakta shakti pradhanaya gadadhara namastute He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Radhe Vrindavan Hadishe Karunamrita Vahini Kripaya Nijapadabja Dasyanmahim Pradiyatam Bhaktya Vihinaya Aparadha Lakshaya Shiptashtakamaditarangamaddhi Kripamai Tvam Sharanam Prapanam Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Sri Satinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai Sri Sri Gaur Nityananda Ki Jai Sri Harinam Prabhu Ki Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Praman, Hari 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 Bol. So, good evening to all of you, Pranam, welcome. Abhay Prabhu, thanks so much, and the extended family for the invitation. And it's my honor, my good fortune, my pleasure to be here sharing with all the Vaishnavas and trying to honor Harikatha and to honor the presence of you all through Harikatha. It's a very serious commitment. It's not just a formal togetherness, but it's a very substantial togetherness. That's the ultimate meaning of togetherness, basically. So the idea today is to continue sharing some thoughts in connection to a book I've published a few weeks ago. But of course, it goes beyond a book. For me, it's a very important idea that it's not my idea. It's just a particular way of framing what I consider it's our common theme as Gaudiyas and even beyond, which is radical personalism. So, and radical personalism, as we were talking a few words before starting with Pranat and Sudharma as well, I just came to know that I had to say publicly, Sudharma, with your permission, that she was one of the first ones to, if not the first one, to conceive of this idea without me knowing about that she was already talking like that. Then I came to know that Rukmini Devi was talking about that Chaitanya Charan gave class on radical person, and I came to know like, oh, unknowingly I was taken from that. But it's beautiful to get to know how different people from different places without knowing each other get to similar places. So that's the beauty of it. And of course, as we were saying yesterday, radical personalism, the term says too much. We are already personalists, at least officially. Our tradition is a personal tradition, personalistic tradition. But strictly speaking, we are radical personalists. Radical means to the very root, to the very core of things. We are concerned to get to the very core of everything. Sarvatra Sarvada, the Bhagavatam says, Tavadeva Jipnyasha, and the spirit through which to sort it through this in every place, in every situation, every time, place, and circumstance, and hopefully to the deepest possibility. So we are persons, we are individuals, but how much of a person we are, how much of an individual, well, what's the potential of being an individual? What's the ultimate reach of being a person? I mean, to receiving the gift of personality and individuality is a great blessing, especially in the human life, where we can be aware of our own existence as individual, which doesn't happen in other species. But of course, that has the gift has some commitment into it, has some price to pay, so has some reach. If you receive a gift like that, part of the price, so to say, to pay, hopefully we are willing to do so, is to ask myself, okay, which is the ultimate reach of this gift? Especially a gift like the one that is coming from Mahaprabhu Nityananda. We are receiving something, okay, but how much this gift can play itself out, can be extended, can be expanded, what's the depth, the breadth? And of course the answer is no limit to that. So then we enter into the land of unlimitedness, where everything that we are receiving can be ever unfolding forever without limit. And so we are under the shelter of that gift. So radical personalism basically has to do with, okay, we are Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we are personalists, but how much of a personalist we can be? What's our potential as a person, as an individual? And of course, maybe sometimes it helps to say it indirectly, how much impersonal we still are in so many of our ways of not only dealing with each other, but dealing with our own selves, sometimes dealing with the bhakti, the practice of bhakti, sometimes even in our own conception of the divine. Although officially we may never say, let's go for Brahman or something like that, but sometimes we may relate to the supreme personality of Godhead, and that's a pretty personalized conception. Not as personal as Krishna is a person. So being impersonal doesn't only mean I deny personhood, but I'm not being as personal as I could be. That's the principle of impersonalism. You have a potential for being a person, and you are just being a 2, 5, 10, 99% of that. There's 1% of impersonalism still lurking there. So, of course, with the idea of radical personalism, I'm not trying to promote any neurosis. Still, there's 1% missing. You could be more person than that. You are not being that. I'm not saying that, but just to remain open to the idea that this idea of being a person and being personalist and being personalized has no boundaries, can always be developed, can always be expanded. And of course, it begins at home, how we relate to ourselves to begin with, how much we treat ourselves as a person. Sometimes we are not very intimate with our own inner world, emotions, psychology. So how much we admit our humanness, as we were talking yesterday. I mean, that's a very important part of radical personalism. If you do not integrate your humanity with your spirituality, that's another variety of impersonalism. Because for us, humanness is very important, because our goal is Nara Lila. Nara Lila means human-like pastimes. And as I say yesterday, human-like, the like doesn't mean half-human pastime. Like human, like pseudo, quasi-human. No, human-like, human means fully human, and like means fully divine. That's Nara Lila. Fully divine, fully human at the same time, paradoxically. So if our goal is to be fully human and fully divine, we have to begin here and now to work on our divinity and our humanity project as well. And that's part of also of radical personalism. So anyhow, today I wanted to talk, of course, about the topic from the perspective through the concept of, and this is something that we shared in Cali 1 month ago, I don't know. That's it. Jai Jagannath was with me there in Sham Ashram in Kali, and we were with the ashram commander, Sham Sundari, and she suggested, like, Maharaj, I mean, it was not a suggestion. There was no second option, but it was very. That's her way of showing intimacy and affection. So, like, because I was supposed to give a lecture outside a retreat that we had, so there was one lecture, and we were wondering what to speak about, what some topic, some title. Yeah, Maharaj, you have to speak about revolutionary spirituality. So, okay, I mean, there was no second word about that. So we shared some words, but that class was in Spanish. So I want to share some of the thoughts that I shared that day here in English. Of course, and in connection to what the book is about, basically, since both of them are basically synonymous. To speak about revolutionary spirituality and radical personalism, we will try to connect them too. And of course, to say revolutionary spirituality is kind of redundant but I have to, just in case, because spirituality ideally has to be revolutionary. And ultimately, the ultimate revolution has to do with the spirit, so to say. But we need to put the two words together. Like sometimes Srila Prabhupada will say, okay, false guru, and he will say, well, a real guru is not false, but I need to mention that because in the name of this, there is so much of that. So sometimes in the name of spirituality, there is so much of non-revolutionary narrative and dynamics. Even sometimes we end up promoting mediocrity and complacency in the name of transcendence. So it's a delicate crime, so to say, using the most sacred without bad intention even sometimes, but and ending up resorting to the sacred for sometimes justifying profanity, so to say. For justifying our own separate agenda in the name of God wants that, like that, or whatever. So even we may not know it, but sometimes we can. The danger is there in potential, as we were talking the other day with some of you. Like we have a bright potential, like Srila Sri Maharaj once said, and that's beautiful. Imagine someone like Srila Bhakti Rakshaksidhar Goswami telling you, your future is brilliant. Wow, that's it. He made my day, week, month, year, lifetime. No, I'm not seeing that brilliance, but if he is seeing that, that's for sure there somehow by the grace of the sadhu. So yes, our future is brilliant. We have the potential, the potential that is beautiful. But sometimes we need to humble ourselves and humble that prospect, knowing that also I have the darkest potential. If I go in the wrong direction, I can end up doing anything. Like the other day we were posting something and someone replied like, I will never do that. And I was like, I got like chills. Like never, be careful with those words, always and never. No. Once one friend of mine told me, I don't know, he heard that somewhere, like someone told him, the always and the nevers only belong to the Supreme. He can say always, never, and he can maintain that. No, we are more in the Niyama Akshama club, which is always, never, sometimes. So yeah, we have to humble ourselves and realize, given certain circumstances, I have potential to be a serial killer. Who knows what? I mean, I don't want to insult any of you. It's just to remain open to the idea that we should remain humble in relation to the idea of potential, which is a beautiful word, but we have to know how to deal with that. So again, we can use spirituality in not very spiritual ways. We can resort to the most refined theology, and we have that most refined theology. So that's a very delicate thing to deal with. You receive such a high, refined, descriptive theology, but you can use all that even so you don't have to change in whatever you have to change. So we can remain in whatever comfort zone we may choose to remain. And of course, revolutionary spirituality has nothing to do with remaining in the comfort zone. I would say, to make a play of words that I make in my book, revolutionary spirituality is not comfort zone, it's confront zone. No? No? So we confront, or we are confronted. Now, confronted is not a bad word, it's just something is put in front of us. And we see whatever we didn't want to see, and was like under the rug, inside the closet, in the shed of our subconscious, throw it some, but not. No? So, but revolutionary spirituality has to do with comfort zone. Beginning at home. Again, I'm not saying this, okay, I'm going home, I will take my husband and comfort zone. Come here, my dear. I have a few things to tell you, and so on. No? But it always begins at home, and being very humbled by the potential we have to make certain mistakes in the name of the most sacred things. So revolutionary spirituality is quite connected to remaining aware of that. And I'm praying for for these situations what we are confronted with what we need to see. That's how I take Kunti's prayer, Vipadas Tasasvat, no? Because someone may think, oh, that sounds like a little dysfunctional, like masochism or something. She's begging for problems. But basically, I feel like she's begging for confrontation, you know? With reality, confrontation with truth telling. As I like to, I mentioned in my book, like for me, confrontation and truth telling is another way of saying intimacy. Yeah? If I love someone and I show intimacy, I will confront that person because I love that person. Truth telling, because I love you. I confront you. I tell you the truth. But that's intimacy. I'm not attacking you. I'm just showing how much I want that close connection. So we want close connection with Krishna. We want intimacy with him. But intimacy, again, has a price. You want intimacy that includes that in the package of intimacy package comes truth-telling, confrontation, entering the comfort zone. And Kunti Devi is praying for that. No, please, Krishna, send me those moments, those tests where I can embrace, where I can see you in front. She's saying, Apunar Baba Darshan, I'm seeing you, having your darshan, by having darshan of those situations through which I am confronted with myself, basically, with all whatever I need to embrace. So revolutionary spirituality has to do with that. To begin at home, again, because sometimes we hear revolution and always think revolution has to be thrown onto others. So let's do the revolution and pick and point and attack or whatever, but homework first. Let me share a few words. I will share a few readings, you can see the colors here. In relation to that, so to also share a few ideas from the book, or what I was supposed to read here. Yeah, a few words on this idea of revolutionary spirituality. It says like this. Although this book addresses relative necessities such as updating the language we employ to convey ancient concepts in postmodern times, it mainly tries to encourage the development of a spirit willing to keep up with the pace of transcendence. Transcendence is unlimited, which means we are called to ever new horizons of understanding. We are to keep pace with an ever-evolving reality that we are part of, with an ever-evolving God we are tied to, and thereby with an ever-evolving tradition through which these very principles are revealed to us. Thus, the tradition needs to remain ever-evolving if it's to accurately represent an ever-evolving proposal, such as Gaudiya Vaishnavism. As it has been beautifully put by Richard Rohr, while addressing the Sweet Absolute, he said, "You are infinite in action, which makes me infinite in becoming. That's my divine possibility." Very nice. Actual being is thus a process of becoming and not a fixed state, an ongoing journey, never a destination. In this way, the business of a prophet is to keep up with the pace of transcendence, a pace that is persistent, mysterious, uninterrupted, and mostly happening outside of the comfort zone. So So that's an important point that we were sharing these days as well. The nature of realities ever unfolding. So Krishna is ever unfolding, like we were saying yesterday. I mean, after 1 nanosecond, Krishna has become more Krishna than he was 5 seconds ago, 1 nanosecond before. More loved by Sri Radha, more beautiful himself, more the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's not that he's a finished product, that I can consume. Go to the shop and give me 3 Krishnas, like one Mahaprabhu, one whatever. It's an ongoing, ever-evolving reality. And we are supposedly we want to relate with that situation. So that means we have to keep the pace of transcendence. Transcendence is, as Mahaprabhu say, Pratipadam Purnam Brita Shradanam. What does it mean? Like at every single step, there's something new to relish. And there's something new to serve, and there's something new to honor, and there is something new to adapt to. It's not just relishing from the sofa, like, okay, a new one, thank you so much, another appetizer over here. But it's a beautiful, constant, ongoing adaptation. We have the Darwin conception, even in Golok, the survival of the fittest. Adaptation, flexibility, following the movement of love, which is unpredictable. Sri Rupa Goswami will say in Ujjval Nilamani, what Ahiri Bhagati Brahmnasra Bhav Kuti Labhavit. He says, love moves like a snake. How does a snake move? Like this? How does a snake move? Yeah. Here we have an expert in Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Ujjval Nilamani. So the snake moves in a crooked way, in zigzag, which means you cannot predict the next movement. It's not like the snake goes there and, okay, see you in that point in 20 minutes. No, like you have no clue which is the next step. So you cannot predict. That's how love moves. It's a totally unpredictable journey. Krishna plays the flute over here, but you don't know where he will be playing the flute the next time. And we cannot complain like, come on, playing here, tomorrow there, a few hours there. Make up your mind. And whenever we go, you'll tell and go back home. No, the gopis are not, I'm not complaining, like just remain a little more predictable, please. No. The whole Golok project is over if you insist on predictability. So revolutionary spirituality has to do with unpredictability, the willingness to coexist with unpredictability, to develop a taste for the unpredictable, to be okay that we are not in control, because we are not in control, but we have to be okay with that. That's the remaining part of the job. We are not in control. That's a fact, but that we are okay with that, that's another thing. I remember seeing that image of some picture. There was a Buddhist monk seated on one rock in the middle of a lake, like very Zen, imaginary. And the quote say, relax, everything is out of control. We're like, relax, everything is under control. No, out of your control, of course. No. Under the control of divine love, although it seems out of control, because it's totally unpredictable. So basically that's the notion. One of the implications of revolutionary spirituality, acknowledge the spiritual reality is an ever unfolding, ever evolving, unpredictable, beautiful, dynamic. It's beautiful. We consciously, voluntarily agree to sign the contract and to enter the journey. I want to do the crooked dance, so to say. I want to follow the zigzag tango that Krishna's invited me to join to, and to keep the pace of transcendence. Transcendence is not a fixed thing that is always the same. Sometimes I see, with all respect, devotees falling into that. Like I tell it, this is a concept. No, but Krishna is eternal. And I realized that for them, eternal means always the same. And it's like, and again, chills count. Like, imagine if you go to try to relate with, yeah, he's eternal. I'm not denying that, but the nature of eternality is dynamic. It's not a museum-like piece. It's not like Golok Vrindavan is a museum, an eternal museum. No, it's eternal, but everyone is like always the same, always predictable, always doing the same thing
On the schedule.
on a scale. I mean, we have this schedule, Astakaliya Lila, but at the same time, that's like we have to understand that's a rough idea of what's going on at each time. It's not like only Krishna is doing that, and whatever he's doing at that moment, it's always the same. I said, yesterday we were talking about that. No, it sounds more. If I'm sent for eternity to a place where every single day the same thing happens, that sounds like hell.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like heaven.
They have movies like that also.
Like what?
Where the day just keeps repeating. They can't escape it.
Mm-hmm. My gosh, God forbid that. No, but the point is that we don't want that. We say that's hell, but sometimes we are not willing to accept the implications of an ever evolving, ever unfolding reality. We want things to be predictable. We want things to be under our radar. You say radar? Radar. No? This will come, next this will come, next this will come, without realizing if that will actually happen, which will never happen, thank God, that will be hell. And we say, no, I don't want hell. But at the same time, we fight when something starts to seem like heaven. When something starts to become unpredictable and out of control, which is the nature of heaven. No. I want everything like perfectly fit into my agenda, but that's hell. You say that you didn't want to go to hell. Oh yeah, you're right. I'm embodied contradiction, basically. That's what we are as sadhakas still. We are work in progress, which means I've been touched by this gift, by this unique grace, but still would part of my day I'm still contradicting myself in so many ways. And it's part of the embarrassment we have to go through, to the humiliation we have to go through. I mean, as once I was reading, someone say, real conversion implies going through a series of necessary humiliations to the false self. Not that someone else is humiliating you, but that you yourself you have to go through that fire to realize, again contradicting myself. I say yesterday I will never do that again. But again, the word humility comes from humiliation, technically speaking. A healthy one, again. Try to please understand my words. I don't want any dysfunction as a byproduct of this kata today, hopefully. So that's basically the nature of spirituality. It's quite revolutionary. And interestingly, the word revolution, just to share a few words on that, interestingly, the origin of revolution comes from the Latin revolvere, which in Spanish we have the word revolver. In English, we will say like stir. You're stirring the dal, so to say. Stir, or sometimes also revolvere means in Latin to turn around. So it's interesting that the idea of revolution has to do with that, revolution. Sometimes I use that term to the but let's stir the dal a little bit. I mean, the inner one. Shh. Let's see what comes. Some bubbles will explode. Maybe some chili jumps in my eye or something. You never know with dal. I remember first time I went to India, I almost died because of a dal. Yeah, I was on the... Yeah. No. I'll be careful. I remember it was the inauguration of Sri Bhakti Vaibhapuri Maharaj's temple in Vrindavan. That was 2007. And it was my first time in India, so I was not like initiated into all of the different nuances of how to drink dal, for example, and to know that there may be full chilies floating in a glass of dal without me seeing that. So you can imagine how the story continues. No? So I just make a big sip, and the chili went straight to radically to the core of my thing. I think that was the first time radical came from. Oh my God. I felt like the whole Vrindavan was like, Agasur was coming and like collapsing completely. No? But anyhow, I survived. I had just one full day of diarrhea or something like that, but here I am. So going back to the topic, revolution is to steer the dial of the heart, so to say, or to turn around, interestingly. So to turn around means like, I'm seeing this like this, let's turn around. I didn't conceive that side of the equation. So it means The revolution will mean then to turn around, dare to see things from another perspective. In the words of Srila Siddha Maharaj, change your angle of vision. Once one devotee asked Srila Siddha Maharaj, I have told this one like 16,108 times, but let's go with 109. Some devotee one asked Srila Siddha Maharaj, Gurudev, please can you give me some service? And this devotee came with all his naivete in his heart, like Gurudev will send me to wash pots or clean the bathroom or some stuff to do. You don't go to Srila Siddha Maharaj asking for that. And if you go asking for that, you will receive a surprise. No? So the devotee asking, can you give me some service? And Srila Siddha Maharaj replied, change your angle of vision. That was his reply. That was the service. Change your angle of vision. Revolution, revolver, turn around, change your angle of vision. And when you change your angle of vision enough, you realize I don't need to ask for service because everything around me is a service opportunity. And there's no limit how much can I change my angle of vision. So with those few words, he gave him service for the rest of his life. Change your angle of vision. And when you think you already changed your angle of vision, change your angle of vision a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. There is no end to how much we can continue adjusting our vision, because reality is constantly adjusting itself. It's constantly evolving and unfolding. Ramon Bihari, welcome. So some words about revolution. No? Change your angle of vision. Dare to see things yet from another perspective. Try to see things beyond the status quo, beyond the comfort zone. That's a very cozy sofa to perceive reality from, but that's not the full picture, so to say. No? It's like if you go to a stadium or to an arena, let's go to my Argentinian samskars for a moment, to a soccer stadium. Soccer, they say here? Football, what's soccer? You have American football also, so how do you call soccer? Okay. Because in Argentina it's football, and that's it. So, and you may be in the stadium. I've been gone through that in my early years with my father and so on. And everyone in the stadium is like insulting the players, like, you should have done this, you should have done that, you should not, because it's like, no? Because from their perspective, no, everything seems wider and deeper, but the point is that they are not in the fire, they are not in the arena, so they are just throwing conclusions from the sofa, basically. That's comfortable, that's easy to say. Go there and see what you see being there, and let's see what you can do. And probably you'll realize, they were doing much better that I could have done being there. So it's easy to remain in the cozy comfort zone, the sofa, so to say, of non-revolution, and throw opinions even on others. That's easy. Social media is made for that, basically. But it's a very different thing to enter into the arena, to be empathic, and to really feel what the other person is going through in that particular situation. That takes time to empathize with the type of, as I put in my book, to the type of blood, sweat, and tears that the other person is tasting in that arena. You need to enter there. That takes time, that takes energy. Empathy is an investment of your life, basically. It's very important. Because if we don't do so, again, there's not much revolution, there's not much turning around, there's not much daring to see things from another perspective. It's uncomfortable to leave the coziness, no, of the spectator seat and to enter the arena and jump and run and sweat and fall, but reality happens on the arena, so to say, on the stadium. So that's basically revolution. And also for revolution includes this idea of re-evolution. You have the word re in English, no? Recalculate, reconceive, recalibrate, re-evolution. So revolution also means maybe there is some evolution but you have to press the re button for a further one, no? Yet another layer of evolution. In our spiritual practice, for example, we started with some momentum, there was some evolution, but at that point, what was evolution at one point becomes stagnation at another. Not to condemn what happened, but I remember once I was talking with one god sister of mine at the time, god sisters. I have ex god sisters, I have ex god sisters, and different dynamics. And she was an ex god sister, and she told me, that was like 15 years ago, and she told me, like, Maharaj, I would really, and with all respect, she told me, like, I would really love to return to what I experienced on the first week in the temple. And I honored what she said, but I was like, oh no, I don't want that. Not because I hate that. That was beautiful. But re-evolution. We have to continue moving forward, not going back to the past. No. Progress is not nostalgia. It's not let's go to, it's like sometimes I give the example, it's like if I call my mom and tell, Mom, those days, glorious days, in which you were like changing my, how do you say? Diapers. Were so beautiful. So beautiful. Let's go back there. Now, let's go back to those early glorious days. And she will say, those were so beautiful that they allowed the present moment to be even more beautiful. So we won back there. No, thank you, man. So because they were so beautiful, those created the foundation for today being even more beautiful. So that's basically the idea of revolution. Revolution is a disposition for a constant new level of evolution, new level of upgrade, update. So change, basically, acknowledging the need of change. That's basically very important. There is change and there's a need for change. It's not that change is something that, okay, I have to change. No, like I was totally resisting till I was put like change. Okay, no, that doesn't seem too voluntary. No? If I take a gun and tell you, love me, and you say, I love you, Maharaj. Of course, you're totally freaking out of fear. You're not loving me. So what's the value of that I love you? So the same is, if I'm forced to change, okay, I will change. But ideally, I'm willing to acknowledge the need for change and trying to welcome that. There's one quote that I share here from Srila Siddhar Maharaj, which is very interesting in this connection. He says, a radical change must be effected in us if we really want a life worth living. This is the singular meaning of our ideal. I love how Srila Siddhar Maharaj speaks. Can I repeat the quote again? This says, a radical change must be effected in us if we really want a life worth living. This is the singular meaning of our ideal. Wow. That's a sutra to unfold. So our ideal, and Srila Siddhar will always speak about the ideal. Ideal is everything for us. Although we may have not fully actualized that ideal, the ideal is still there. Again, the potential we can attain, that's who we are, in one sense. That's how Krishna is seeing us, how the sadhus are seeing us. They are not seeing so much for who we were in the past. It sometimes happens, you did something 35 years ago, and I will tell, do you know such person? Oh, yeah, I know that person. Yeah, 35 years ago he did that. I know him. That's it. The person doesn't have any chance for progressing, changing. You just label that person unlimited to that particular incident 3 decades ago. That's it. Not very generous. Some other people is a little bit more generous and is judging us according to who we are in the present. But still it's problematic, because if I am to be judged myself by who am I in the present, I'm lost. There's not too much hope. So how Krishna and the saintly personalities are seeing us is according to our future, basically, to all that we can be, to our potential. They are not judging us, oh, you did that in the past, you are still this in the present, but as Srila said, you have a brilliant future. That's who you are. I see you according to your potential. That's very generous. Of course, that's very generous, but we have to extend that generosity to others. As we spoke yesterday, oh, Krishna has unconditional love for me. Yes, and that means that you should have unconditional love for everyone else, because Krishna has that same type of love for everyone else. So that's like, oops. That's difficult. So in the same way, Krishna is saying, according to our potential, we should extend the generous ambition to others. So according to that potential, again, we may not be there yet. We may be here now, and we have our potential there. And we will perceive, okay, I need to change some things so I can fully actualize that potential. If someone is seeing me according to my brightest future, and I'm being honest, I will be humbled by that. And also I will be very sincere in recognizing where I am in relation to how the other person is seeing me. But the generosity of that person seeing me in that way will inspire me to do all the necessary changes to actually arrive there. So it's important to embrace, to welcome the principle of change. Spiritual life is about change, basically. Spiritual life is not about remaining the same. But again, as we mentioned, sometimes we take spirituality as an excuse for remaining the same. While actually spirituality is to be revolutionary, which means never the same, always something new, ever new. That's it. That's the nature of transcendence, as we were saying yesterday. When Sri Krishna has had some union with Sri Radha, and they somehow separate from each other after 3 nanoseconds. Somehow Sri Radha sees Krishna again, and she asks Lalita, like, who is that blue sapphire charming person that I'm seeing with curly black hair? And Lalita is like, 3 nanoseconds ago you were with him. That's Krishna. No, but who is him? That's not the Krishna I met 3 nanoseconds ago. Because of course, again, Krishna is no longer that Krishna from 3 nanoseconds ago. So everything is unfolding naturally. Constant change, constant shift. So sometimes we need in our life to go through a few tectonic shifts for us to develop some grace to deal with with the dynamics of life. I've had my own dose, but I'm sure I will have more. There's never enough tectonic shifts, as much as you need to be properly carved and be ready to render whatever necessary service is there. And of course, to enter into the land of tectonic shifts, it's a very interesting proposal, because again, it's entering to a land of, again, unpredictability, into the land of unknown, into the land in which in the non-change dimension, you know certain things and you think, I know how this works, and then you are thrown into the tectonic shift planet, and then whatever you thought you knew, you start to I'm not so sure if what I knew is like I thought it was. No, so again, you start to realize, before I know, I have to unknow so many things. Before I get to know Krishna more, probably I have to unknow Krishna. No, I have to deconstruct certain ideas that I may have that were actually limiting on all that he is. You follow my point? It's like, if we need to reconstruct, sometimes we need first to deconstruct. We need to unlearn before we learn many times. And this is an ongoing process. Because let's be honest, no, as human beings, with our good intention, but the tendency is boxing reality. No, this label, no, this label here, boxing, this goes in this box, this goes in this box. And don't try to put Krishna in a box. He doesn't fit in anyone. Don't try to put a a saintly person in a box. I'm trying to put anyone in a box, literally. That's a form of impersonalism, again. And in any case, we can put a box, but each box will be unique to each person. If you want to speak about boxes, okay, you have your own box. Nobody else have that box. It's a totally specific, unique box. It's not. I mean, I don't like to even speak about boxes in that case. But my point is, sometimes we put that box. No? Many times I joke about this, but it's also serious and sad sometimes. But many times it happened to me. Like, and I was talking to one about the other day about it. And he told me that he's in Italy and he was reading my book, and he told me that he was giving some classes and sharing some points and the devotees will like, and he said, okay, that book comes from a book written by a friend of mine called Swami Padmanabha. And he'll tell me immediately after I say that, the immediate question was, who is his guru? Boxing on the first layer. No, depending who is his guru, I will put him in a particular box. No? You follow? No? So it's and it happened to me many times, meeting devotees sometimes on the street, like, Pranam, who is your guru? It's like, oops, no. It's like if I meet you and say, what's your social security number? After 5 seconds, I'm asking you that. The most confidential thing. Now, that's not actually Vaishnava etiquette. Vaishnava etiquette is Gopayet Ishtadevatan Gopayet Gururadmana Gopayet Chaniyamantran Gopayet Niyamalikam. You have to hide your Ishtadev, hide your Guru, hide your Malika, hide your mantra. And hide doesn't mean Gurudev comes and you kidnap him and put him in the closet. Don't take it literally. But you keep that reality confidential, and that information will come naturally when the relationship is unfolding organically, and that's it. But sometimes we use, again, these sacred realities. Who is your guru? I mean, that's important. That's totally sacred. But how we use that inquiry? Who is your guru? Oh, okay. According to your reply, I know if I have to continue talking to you or not, or from which place. And I mean, like if every disciple from the same guru is the same person or something like that. Again, that's impersonalism. This boxing. So if we want to think outside of the box, as it is say, you have to be careful of putting people in boxes, because that's completely against who everyone else is. Even in connection to Krishna, again, it's not only among us humans. You can put Krishna in a box, and I can ask, who is Krishna? And you give the list, the official list of what you are supposed to say when someone asks you that question. No? He's this, he's that. Who is Krishna? He's blue. Yeah, but what's your idea of blue? What's your bluishness and what's his bluishness? Do you think that he's blue in the same way you may be thinking of blue? Be careful of limiting his bluishness. He plays a flute. Yeah, but watch out for thinking that's the same bansuri I heard when I learned to play myself. Whatever, no? He has a peacock feather. Watch out. It's not exactly the same way you may be conceiving of a peacock right now. His peacock feather is ever evolving. His bluishness is ever evolving. Yes, I'm not being bizarre here. That's the reality. It's not always the same bluishness. It's not always the same flute playing. It's not always the same melody. I mean, in Shastras it's great. He's creating new ragas at every moment, simultaneously making his own musical rules, breaking all rules, creating new rules, breaking all those, creating new rules. So watch out for this Krishna. That's the box, Krishna box. So that's important, no? To remain open to change our minds about who Krishna is. Do not be so sure about who Krishna is. Do not be so sure about anything. And this is not attacking your faith, no? Because a healthy faith has to coexist with a healthy dose of uncertainty. I remember when I visited Richard Rohr, he told me that. He said, the opposite of faith is certainty. The opposite of faith is certainty, not uncertainty, certainty. That's the opposite of faith, because faith has to do with dealing with the unknown, dealing with mystery, coexisting with things that we can not fully understand completely, and being okay with that. That's real faith also. It's not that I need to know everything in advance perfectly and then I have some faith. It's like, that's not faith. That's, you are on a control cruise or something, basically, no? A few words from my book, with your permission, in this connection. We have time, right, Abai? Okay. You let me know when I'm just, when it's too much. Or you let me know when it's too much, not only Abai, please. Yeah. So it says like this. A few words on the comfort zone that we need to, because sometimes, again, comfort zone can be even a theological comfort zone. I have a certain idea of how God is, what He is, and we may need eventually to be moved from that. Krishna himself will do the loving kicking out from that particular area. So the comfort zone, it says, is a zone where concepts and words have a fixed museum-like meaning, a zone which allows for unchallenged complacency and mediocrity to reign without question. In fact, mediocrity can be firmly and easily established through revelation. Instead of being rooted in tradition and revelation, we can end up being rotten in them. A play of words. Of course, not that revelation is rottening us, but we can rotten ourselves in the name of revelation instead of rooting ourselves in that. So again, you can just, the worst crimes in history are done in the name of revelation, basically. God wants this, I'm representing there. You're really invested into that, and you are able to do anything in the name of the absolute. It's delicate to deal with absolutes. When the absolutes come to your table, to your glossary, you can become a public danger immediately if you don't know how to manage revelation, how to deal with the absolutes. And one more close one about this point. He says, God is always bigger than the boxes we build for Him. So we should not waste too much time protecting the boxes. These boxes are our mental structures that keep us in the comfort zone and that often give us a distorted picture of the sweet absolute. So again, boxes are there, but do not spend too much time protecting the boxes. Like if there were the sadhya, no, or something like that, the goal to attain. So a few words on the idea of revolution. I forgot I was talking about that. All this has to do with that, revolution. Because sometimes, again, we hear the word revolution, and each one of us will have a particular idea about what does it mean. But actually, we are trying to point in this direction. What does it mean, revolutionary spirituality? And interestingly, going to the word spirituality, it comes from the Latin spiritualitas, and spiritualitas means breath of life. That's a very interesting idea, because breathing is an ongoing cycle, and it's something, of course, which keeps us alive. No? So the idea is spirituality means something living. It's a living thing. It's a living organism. It's a living participation. Again, it's not a spirituality. Here's your box. No? Fit in. Something like that. Something constantly dynamic, something constantly revolutionary. And something that we were talking today in the morning that has to do with a commitment that goes beyond even institutional affiliation. We can have institutional affiliation. I'm not here promoting burning churches or stuff like that, but the actual commitment is trans-institutional. Our commitment to the ideal is to the ideal. Institution may be a good glass to bring the water, but the water is, you don't give an empty glass to a man dying in the desert. Here I brought you this beautiful glass cup that you can get neurotic about. There's no a single drop of water. No, thank you. I cannot drink glass. So in the same way, I mean, real spiritual commitment has to do with joining, as we're talking today, joining a heart. We cannot join an institution. I mean, we may think that we join an institution, we belong to an institution, but we join a heart that happens to be beating in a particular institution. So eventually you end up joining the institution, but the actual joining was to the heart of whomever was in that particular place that made your heart beat similarly. That heart was beating in a way that made your heart beat in the same rhythm and frequency. Like, wow, this is creating an interesting rhythm and orchestra here. So you follow that rhythm and you end up entering into whatever place that heart is beating, that drum is beating. So that's the actual participation in spirituality. Institution may be there, may not be there, but the actual commitment is trans-institutional. The actual commitment is with our ideal, as Srila Maharaj will say. The actual commitment is with our potential. One day that phrase came. We have a commitment with our potential. We have a potential. There is something that we can become, and we have a commitment with all that we can be. And the commitment is try to get closer to all that you can be. I always remember Srila Siddhar Maharaj will describe the guru very beautifully. Of course, there are many ways one can. If someone asks you, what is the guru? What's Sri Guru? So many things can be said. And he once said something that I personally liked a lot. He said, your guru is your own potential appearing in front of us. Our own potential appearing in front of us. In other words, that person is showing you, this is all that you can become. That person is kind of a portal, transparent portal that is like giving you that epiphany. This is your potential. And I'm here to help you attain that potential. That's a very beautiful idea. No? Gurus, your own potential taking form, taking shape in front of you and talking to you, so to say. Your own potential talking to you. So, some words about what's revolutionary spirituality. We have a few more minutes. You have time for you to tolerate me a few more minutes, then we go to Q&A. I want to share a few words regarding also the book that I shared a few quotes, but also in big part, this book is about, at least for me, on how to say it, how to be a Gaudiya Vaishnava and how to continue remaining as a Gaudiya Vaishnava from a proper place. Because again, we become Gaudiya Vaishnava, so to say, we officially join whatever, an institution, accept the guru, put the tilak for the first time, whatever you meant is not an external thing, but we become devotees, as you would like to say, although that may have started who knows where, but when, but you have to continue becoming a devotee. Again, remember, this idea of becoming is not something that happened once in the past and that's it. No? Like you become husband and wife one day officially when you accept that person in a ceremony or whatever, but you have to continue becoming husband and wife the next day, the next day, the next day. Huh? You say in the ceremony, I accept her for the rest of my life. And of course, everyone will celebrate and honeymoon will be there and all that mother of the honeymoon. And we have all our honeymoons even in terms of spirituality. No? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur calls the honeymoon period Utsahamai, no? Honeymoon in contemporary terms. And it's great, it's perfect, but eventually you have to continue reaffirming your vows on a daily basis. I mean, you have to continue choosing each other at every moment. So the idea is the same. Okay, I became a Gaudiya Vaishnava, whatever, 20-something years ago, And that was, but I had to continue becoming Gaudiya Vaishnava, because continue becoming Gaudiya Vaishnava means continue developing my relationship with Krishna, with everything else, with him in the center. That's to be a Gaudiya Vaishnava. It's not again about official membership and card carrying presentation. It's about heart carrying membership. How I'm carrying my heart. That will make me a member in a substantial sense. So how to continue being a Gaudiya Vaishnava? Of course, in my particular case, I had to ask that question a few times in a very deep and serious way about after certain tectonic shifts. No need to enter into the details, but the point is, I want to remain a Gaudiya Vaishnava, but there are some situations that have some tectonic shift that have moved, so I can't remain as a Gaudiya Vaishnava in the exact same way I used to be yesterday. So how to continue? How to rediscover my own tradition, basically. That was basically the challenge I had in front of me. Okay, I had to rediscover my whole tradition in a way that remains relevant and relatable to me. And I'm not just a dysfunctional people guy there doing niyama graha till I die. No, niyama graha means just doing something without knowing what I'm doing that, basically. How to continue developing my relationship with God from this particular angle. Everything is relational. We are developing a relationship with someone at any moment. At any moment, we are developing a personal relationship, whether it's with Krishna, with every one of you, with ourselves. It's all about developing personal relationships at every breath we take. Radical personalism. So that's also revolutionary spirituality, just to ask yourself how to continue becoming a devotee. That's revolution. To have the, I'm not saying I had the courage to do that. I was forced to make that question. I was forced by circumstance to, okay, so now what? But but that's an important question. That's what spirituality is about. Spirituality doesn't mean to do things. I will say, of course, we do things, but in essence, spirituality doesn't mean so much doing stuff, but asking certain questions, to continuing asking certain questions. From the basis of those questions and the answer to those questions, we do some things, or we stop doing those things and we start doing others. But you continue asking internally certain questions. So how can I continue participating in this? I want to participate in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. That means I want to be part. No, I want to be a part, not a part. No, so I have to be a participant. It's a participatory movement. Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan is very participatory. No? Come, join, jump into the fire with us. No? Sankirtan Yajna. And for that, we sometimes, again, at the time of replying to those questions, how to continue, how to rediscover my tradition, how to rediscover myself in the context of rediscovering my tradition. That requires sometimes to be challenged and to challenge certain dynamics, not for rebellion's sake. No, like let's challenge everything and let's be just purely anarchic, so to say. I have my anarchic days in my punk rock teenagehood, but now it's time for nourishing the sense of rebellion, so to say, and just not conforming to the norm for the sake of conforming to the norm. Basically, that's the idea. Interestingly, the very word ecstasy, which is the goal of our life, we want ecstasy, bhava, that's the goal of sadhana. The word ecstasy means out of the norm. That's the meaning of the word, etymologically speaking. So you want ecstasy. Our goal is ecstasy, but we have to embrace a certain spirit to reach that goal. That goal is out of the norm. So my point is, you have to learn to be comfortable sometimes, not conforming to the norm, because ecstasy means out of the norm, on some way or another, on some level or another. And even if sometimes in our environment, in the dynamics in our tradition, we may perceive, okay, the great majority is conforming to the norm in a way that it starts to feel unhealthy. Well, probably we are invited and we have a right and we have a duty to not conform to the norm. We can lovingly criticize the current condition of our tradition as a service to the tradition. You have in English some saying something like, the one who loves you beats you, or something like that. And we have one in Spanish.
Not exactly.
All the laughing makes me think there's some there's some version, but with a bad word included in it. No, okay. I thought you were shy about saying that, and that's what you said. Okay, we have one in Spanish. That's what I'm thinking.
There is a sense of it, but yeah,
Okay.
not the same. But you saying it, there's a sense of.
El que te quiere te aporrea. Aporrea is like boom, 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 boom. So the ones who loves you beats you. Anyhow, we are creating the quote if it's not. Okay, I won't ask further into that direction just in case. So my point is, there is a place for loving criticism, for constructive criticism, as a show of affection, as we talked before, confrontation, truth-telling, intimacy. Like Abraham Lincoln once said, we are in the US, I can quote him. He's saying, he who has a heart to help has a right to criticize. No, so if the disposition is there, we can say that's the base of constructive criticism. No, I mean, it's necessary. It's totally necessary. Sometimes we go too much to the extreme of do not criticize because that will be offensive. Or we go to the extreme that not even constructive criticism is allowed. So nothing should be criticized. Nothing should be pointed at. That's dangerous. That's equally dangerous, so to say. So constructive criticism is required, which basically means if I tell you something, or anyone, first they have to, a few steps for constructive criticism to be there. First, they have to be sure what I'm seeing in you is not actually something in me that I'm projecting, because probably you do that first layer and 95% you realize, oh, that's me, sorry. Oh, yeah. Mirroring and projecting, anyhow. But if you pass the test and realize, no, actually, that's present in that person. The second thing is, okay, before saying that, why not first see some beautiful things about the person, so you don't not only see what you're about to say, but first appreciate something very unique and unique. Then third, try to ask yourself why I'm presenting this criticism. What's my intention? Which are my motives? Is there some healthy motive? And if you pass those first three tests, then comes the fourth one, which is, okay, I'm mentioning this to you, but also I'm committing to accompany and support you in your attempt of changing what I'm pointing you to. That's not so easy, because it's easy to tell, hey, Abai, with all affection, but you need to change this. So good luck. And I leave. And I throw the baggage, okay? No? I'll pray for you. But yeah, to have the commitment to, no, I will be there for you and accompany you and struggle with you, and you can count with me, and so on and so forth. So that's constructive criticism, basically. And that's important. That's part of the commitment for each of us as members of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. Bhaktivinoda Thakur once said something that I was like shocked, but at the same time like, wow. In the good sense, in one of his Sajantoshini publication, he say, those who have been entrusted, you say in English, entrusted with being members of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, have the duty of trying to remove all the anarthas from the Sampradaya. Again, with this, he's not meaning that the essence of Gaudiya Vaishnavism has anarthas, but in the current dynamics of a community at any given point in history, there will be stuff to uproot, so to say. That was his point. And his point was, and of course, maybe the leaders have that duty. If you just came 5 days ago to the Gaudiya Sampradaya, it's not maybe your duty to uproot the anarthas from the Sampradaya. But as you become an active member, there is some responsibility there. And of course, all this happens as long as we are removing our own anarthas first. No, it's not about removing anarthas around the whole world and nobody's touching my weeds, so to say. No? First, the upasakas, as Mahaprabhu was saying, one's own heart. No? So that's a point for us. No, for us to be members of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, I like to describe it Sampradaya as because again, this word sometimes you say Sampradaya and it becomes too standardized, too normal. Oh, yeah, that's a lineage, a school, an institution, stuff you belong. But Sampradaya, it's a living school. I like to describe Sampradaya as a living school of prophets. And when I say prophet, please do not think that I'm talking about people doing miracles and descending from heaven, but the word prophet means someone who speaks on behalf of. And in this case, of course, ideally in behalf of the sweet absolute. So that means to be a contributing member in the parampara. You have to have your own voice. If you don't have it, you have to develop your own voice so you can offer your own voice in service of the parampara. Because of course we totally honor what our acharyas have said in the past, but also an important question is, what will they be saying in the present? Probably some things will be different, or will be, everything probably will be different. In everything in the sense of deeper. No, I'm not saying that if Prabhupada will be talking now, he will deny that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. I'm not saying that. He will change that. But he will go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Because that's the nature of reality. You can always go deeper and deeper and deeper. So the real question sometimes is not so much what Srila Prabhupada said, but what Srila Prabhupada will be saying now. And then to realize, well, we are supposed to represent what he will be saying at present. That's the commitment of a member of Parampara. Parampara means literally param, para. Param, para means one after another, after another, after another, after another. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur will say in his Bhagavad speech, like the how he say, the thought of the author's thought must progress in the reader. Naturally, in the form of development or correction, he will say. So that's the ongoing spirit of Parampara. And of course, whenever we, just before almost concluding, but whenever we, if we feel the need, okay, something needs to be pointed at, whether in myself or in the environment, there may be some problem to solve. It's also important that we allow ourselves to take some time to understand the problem first. Because sometimes we rush into trying to solve the problem, but we haven't understood what's the actual problem. There's one quote from Albert Einstein that was nice. He said, if I will have 60 minutes to solve a problem, I will spend 55 minutes trying to understand the problem and then 5 minutes solving it. So basically the idea is, by understanding the problem, you have almost solved it totally. So sometimes in our tradition, not only in our tradition, everywhere in life, we are quick to find problems, and even we are quick to try to solve the problems, but sometimes we don't spend enough time trying to understand what's the problem. As if you don't understand the problem, you may be trying to solve the wrong problem, and that's a bigger problem. Because if you misidentify the problem, you may spend lots of time trying to solve something that was not the actual problem. So the actual problem remains undetected, and we may be investing time in things that are not the real problem. So that's an important thing. So from that place, I try to share a few thoughts in the book on how we can participate in our tradition, and how we are to become prophets, all of us. Again, prophet means to speak for, on behalf of, to represent Parampara, Sri Guru, Bhagavan. The prophet is not just like an outsider throwing rocks, but also it's not an insider sitting comfortably from the defending the status quo, so to say. The prophet has to be someone like with one foot on each place, so to say. Chaos and order, so to say. Trying to, from that place, trying to make a contribution. And that's the role of all of us. Again, all of us are to become prophets in that sense of the term. Something who is the expert in discerning what remains essential, what has become irrelevant. That's a constant daily struggle. Srila Sridhar Maharaj will describe progress in those terms. Progress means accepting a higher conception, discarding a lower one. Do you think that happens only once in a lifetime? It happens once in a nanosecond probably, but it happens constantly. No? So what's essential, what has become relevant? What's essential, what has become irrelevant? I said relevant before? Whatever. So that's an ongoing process that all of us are invited as committed members of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. Not out of rebellion, not out of resentfulness, not out of cynicism, but out of love and commitment. And that's the role of a revolutionary spiritualist. So that's the topic of today. So just again, if it was not clear, a few words of conclusion. Revolutionary spirituality is not here about let's change the foundations of our school, let's modify the Siddhanta, our original teachings, nothing like that, but let's change the eyes. I mean, not these ones. Let's change the eye through which we understand the teachings. It's more a modification of the vision we have. That's why the Guru is described in terms of the eyes. I mean, he's a, how do you say in English? The one who works on your, sorry?
Optometrist.
Again?
Optometrist.
Optometrist. Wow. Okay, optometrist.
You're good with etymology. You should be able to break that.
Yeah, wow. That's an interesting one. I'm tempted to. Anyhow, so the Gurus describe that. The Gurus describe someone who will give you a new set of eyes, who will teach you how to see. Because we may have, again, revelation, we may have everything, but we have to learn how to see all that. You may have everything, but if you don't learn how to see, you are blind to whatever you have in front of you. A paradigm shift again. I always like that the very first word that Jesus invoked in his ministry, it was metanoia. Metanoia, which basically means change your mind. But interestingly, it was translated, unfortunately, historically, that word was translated as repent. Which I have nothing against proper repentance, but the point is that the idea of change your mind was publicly transformed to repent. Repent. But actually, metanoia means change your mind. Mantra means basically something like that. Mantra means transcend your mind, but basically means change your mind. We are not trying to discard the mind and to put it in fire, but just to spiritualize it and making the mind pandurat matmanastu syajanatma vatmanajita anatmanastu satrate vartitanmaiva satrabhaya. Krishna said, your mind can be your worst enemy. Okay, here's the challenge. Make your worst enemy your best friend. That's like, oof. No? Try to think about the worst enemy in your life. Hopefully nobody appears in the picture, but let's say you have a worst enemy. I'm seeing Jai Jagannath thinking. He has a considerable list and he's trying to find top 5, top 1. No? I can empathize with you, Jai Jagannath. You're not alone. So, I mean, we have no enemies. Of course, some people may think there are enemies, but there's no actual enemies. So, but the challenge is, okay, make your enemy, your worst enemy, your best friend. That's like, okay. Love, I mean, Christ will say, love your enemy. That's the basic same idea. Love your friend is kind of, I mean, that's easy. So like I say, I love your kids. I mean, that's already happened. Love your worst enemy. Okay, the only way to do so is to stop seeing that person as an enemy. That's the magic of it. So change your mind. Mantra means basically that. So that's the change of eyes we are trying to invoke here, so to say, to learn to see things from another perspective. It's interesting. I always like the fact that the very first word in the whole cosmic manifestation that was heard by Brahma was tapa. That was kind of the, how to say, like landmark? No, what's the word in English? Like something like defines a particular thing from that moment on.
Defining moment.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes things are easier than what you might think.
Sorry.
Thank you for humbling me. I always wanted to make more complicated. Charlatan, thank you so much.
Watershed might be a good word.
Defining moment, defining.
Watershed might be a good word.
No, okay. A little bit more complicated. So that was the watershed. Like, okay, tapa. This whole Srishti Lila is about tapa. And tapa actually means fire. And it's interesting because Brahma heard fire. And fire also means light, among many other things, of course. And Brahma was not seeing no light. He was seeing anything because it was only himself at that point. So it was all dark. And he heard fire. He heard light, so to say. And the only way he saw light was like, he turned inwards. No, he entered into introspection. He changed his mind. He changed his set of eyes again. He closed his eyes. And he opened another set of eyes internally, so to say. So he created an internal movement. So toward introspection means like inspect, internal inspection, basically. We're talking about that today in the morning, I think. Inspect inwardly. No? So he did that internal movement, and of course, as a result of that, Brahma is the original Acharya of our Sampradaya. So that internal movement in time created an external movement called Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. That's a movement we call Krishna consciousness movement. But any movement starts by an internal movement. Srila Prabhupada founded the movement, but before the official founding of the movement, there was another type of movement inside of him. When he heard his Guru's instruction, there was a movement in his heart. When he was in Jaladuta, writing prayer at the lotus feet of Krishna, some other movement in his heart. So all that internal movement eventually flowed him and manifested as an external movement. Same with Mahaprabhu. There was something first moving him inside so badly, you say? Sorry, I'm practicing my English with you. I have no other option. So that internal movement was so moving that eventually a whole movement came from that internal movement that we call Gaudiya Sampradaya. He was a golden, in the words of Srila Srila, a golden volcano of divine love, erupting, and its lava consuming everything on its way, he will say very poetically. So let me show one last quote, and with this I'm concluding, I promise you. In connection to this idea of internal movement and external movement. So where is that part? Okay. Yeah. It says like this. Our hope does not lie in buildings or in the staff required to maintain them, but rather in the transformed lives of people. And it is on that we can build on. In the Gaudiya school, these prophets are called Saragrahi Vaishnavas, or essence seekers. And it is only through such people and through such movement, a movement ignited in the hearts of such people, that we will be able to provide a gateway to the heart of the gift of our own tradition, for ourselves as well as others. In this way, if we want the movement to grow, then our hearts have to grow. The more our hearts grow, the more the movement grows. So anyhow, a few words on radical revolutionary spirituality, which basically is another way of speaking about radical personalism. So thank you so much for your presence and attention. And I don't know if we have a few minutes for Q&A. Yes, sure. If there is any comment or question, Jai Jagannath.
I have a question about keeping up with the pace of the
Mm,
absolute.
mm,
My mind was brought to the beginning of the seventh canto where Parikshit Maharaj is asking why Krishna favors the devas over the demons.
mhm,
And essentially, in reply to that, Shukadeva Goswami is saying that because both the devas and the demons are creatures of nature, they actually don't have the ability to keep up with the pace of Bhagavan's Leela.
mm,
And therefore, he invests the devas and also the asuras with his own Shakti,
mhm,
his own internal potency that facilitates their keeping up with the pace of Leela.
mhm,
And therefore, the demons can oppose Krishna and the devas can assist him. And
mhm,
without the ingress of that energy, they wouldn't be able to oppose or assist because they're just creatures of nature and Bhagavan is transcendent.
mhm,
So I was thinking about, the absolute is always unfolding and we have the responsibility of like keeping up with the pace. But there's like this, I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like this tension that without being invested with this power of God, then there's no question of actually keeping up with the pace of the unfolding of nature, even the unfolding of nature, to speak of the unfolding of God's plan for the Sampradaya and life,
mhm,
without being invested with that energy. So on the one hand, there's like that sense of like, well, what can I even do without being invested in that, with that energy?
mhm,
And like, I'm thinking of verses like Mahatma Tuman Partha. So without being a Mahatma under the shelter of the internal energy, who can do anything
mhm,
to assist or oppose? On the one hand, and on the other hand, there's like this responsibility that we have to keep up with the pace, and so that we remain relevant and that we remain effective and meaningful, even to our own members, or to speak to anyone outside the circle. So there's like a tension of without God, you can't do anything, but then you're supposed to do something.
mhm.
And I don't know, it's like, how does one reconcile? Like, I think you can get the sense of what I'm saying, but I feel like there needs to be some sort of reconciliation of these two ideas.
Mhm.
You have sort of like the monkey holding on and the
The
cat,
cat.
that sort of imagery. But there's like I don't know if it's like a polarity, but it's like, unless God does it, you can't really do anything.
Mhm.
But there is some responsibility on our side.
He can do something. I can tell you. Okay.
Yeah, so what is our true responsibility when
Mm.
a lot that needs to be accomplished really has to be accomplished from above? Or
Mhm.
how do we reconcile with all these sorts of
Mm.
this is like our theology. We speak like this often, and it could be like there can be a sense of disempowerment in that sort of message, like without the investment. So yeah, that's it's not the clearest question, but
Yeah.
a sense of the dynamic.
I think I got it. Yeah, and I will relate that to the classical grace effort dynamic, so to say, in terms of, okay, what's Krishna doing, what I'm supposed to do, because sometimes you go too much to one side, too much to the other, and if you go too much to the personal effort thing, it becomes like a meritocracy, that it all depends on what I do and it's my merit and I attain, and then you can even become arrogant because of thinking I did it myself. But if you go too much to the extreme of, well, if Krishna wants, he will do everything, and as we were talking the other day, like someone might say, Krishna, whatever you want, I will do it. And Krishna says, I want to know what you want. I want you to invest your own individuality, your own personhood. To me, that's radical personalism. Like we were joking the other day, if Krishna is there with the gopis, he won't tell the gopis, I think now it's time for you to be angry with me to increase the experience of rasa. So I think you should invoke that particular. I mean, he doesn't need to tell them what to do. Their will is totally invested for his pleasure. So regarding your question or your presentation, what I can say, and of course this is an ongoing dialogue, it's not that I'm about to give you the definitive sutra and stop asking about that. This is constantly ongoing. But I always like to speak in terms of like crafting the Krip Patra, so to say. No, our heart is like a patra, means like a recipient vessel, and Kripa, no, for mercy to be received. Okay, yeah, Krishna's mercy is there, but what are we doing with the vessel that will hold that will bear that? So there is something for us to do, and there is something for him to do. The example I always like that you may know is the one of someone who falls into a well. You say no well now, like well, and it's 10 meters deep, so you fall there, and there's nothing in one sense you can do, but there's at least one thing you can do, which is shout like mad, help, help, help. That's the only thing you can do. That's it. But nobody else can do that. You fall. The one outside the well cannot. I'll do the shouting. No, he needs to hear your shouting to come to your rescue. So you have to do something. It's not too much, but in that particular situation, and you have to shout really loud. And then, of course, the person will come, will be compassionate. Okay, we'll see, we'll go, we'll bring the rope, we'll throw the rope. You have again, second part, you have to hold the rope. Nobody else can do it for you. It's not too much, but you have to do it. By comparison, it's not too much. And then the person may be saving you, and in the process of being saved, I don't know, in the well, there may be some beehives or something, and the bees are starting to bite you, and it's like, I'm about to throw the rope, and the person says, let these bees do everything they want, I'm saving you. So you have to tolerate while you're holding to the rope, and eventually the person saved you. Although you did your part, you will never think, I saved myself, much less I saved the other person. I mean, you will go out and you won't tell to the person, did you see how nicely I hold onto the rope? No, I mean, that person will throw you back into the hole. You say that. Generally, you will be completely humble and say, you saved my life. Although you had to do your part. So I will say that that's kind of the role of effort and grace. Now, grace is doing the bigger chunk, so to say, of the equation. But there is something we are expected to do, because again, the grace may be there knocking on your door. Srila Sridhar Maharaj will say that. I like how he puts it. He say, Krishna is giving everything to you right now, but he's asking from you a little bit of collaboration to accept his gift. No, it's like if I'm giving you a gift and I'm asking you, please put your hand, collaborate. No, thank you. No, but that's all you have to do. But sometimes we are not even willing to do that. No, like the famous Michelangelo painting, like God is like, take my hand, here's the gift. And we are like, not checking WhatsApp or whatever. The guy's like, I don't know if I will do my part. No? So yeah, I will. At least personally, that's how I kind of conceive that in my own mind. I mean, even though it feels so hard that what we have to do is so much, still, if you put the bigger picture, invoke the bigger picture, you realize at the end of this, grace is doing basically everything. And I have basically to allow grace to, because if not, it's not voluntary also. If it's completely forced, it's kind of, where's our will again? And we had no choice in the matter. So also that's the glory of being a sadhana siddha, so to say. you have to choose. I'm going there. You have to go through the tests. No, that's like what Krishna tells Gopakumar in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. No, when he arrives there, somehow he tells, I was there with you in every door you knocked, and many times you knocked doors, and the door was slammed upon your face, and you were rejected and you were humiliated, and I was right next to you in every one of those moments. You were suffering and looking for me and crying for me, and I left you. But I appreciate that you're going through that. No? So
But I mean, it's also just really like we talked a lot about the dynamic of love. And you know, all the cowherd men were sitting there holding up Govardhan Hill. It's just something that ultimately just naturally springs from within the heart of the living being. And why was Krishna there in the first place anyway with the demigods and the demons? He was asked by his devotees. You know, it's always constantly an evolving relationship of love, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah. That's what we want. Anyhow, a few thoughts we can continue unfolding for the rest of our lifetime, no problem. We have time, we have eternity on our side, so that's the idea. Nityam Bhagavat Sivaya. What's your name, sir?
Mukunda.
Mukunda, bro.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you for your presence.
I just had a question regarding, so it feels as though our situation here in the material world is, well, in my case, is kind of embarrassing to be with this body and this mind and this conditioning. And that embarrassment or shame, I mean, I can imagine, like if I was put into the spiritual world, I would cause a disturbance because of the way that I am and conditioned like that. But how does one, but that feels like an obstacle in my relationship with Krishna, like I must come forward. There's a certain boldness or confidence that Krishna will accept us and that we must come forward in spite of this shameful condition. So I'm not exactly, do you have any advice on how to navigate that, where we are and where we want to go, but having no qualification and the reality of this embarrassing condition?
Thank for your words. Yeah, thanks for bringing up that point, because there's always the danger, the potential of making the spiritual journey a guilt trip also, and that's not the idea. And unfortunately, I've seen many devotees sometimes getting relatively neurotic about being unworthy, I'm failing, I'm falling. And I'm not proposing let's fall and fail for the pleasure of the Lord. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you will fail, you will fall, and that's okay. That's normal. We have to normalize failure. No? We have traumatized failure. It's time to normalize failure. Again, not to justify failure and do anything, but to normalize it, not to traumatize it, and to understand that Krishna is right from the very beginning, no beginning, but right from the very beginning. He's made of Krishna doesn't have love for someone. Krishna is made of love. That's not the same. One thing is to love someone, other thing is to be loved in yourself. So you cannot not love. If you are made of love, it's unavoidable that you will love in every direction possible. You cannot stop loving. So if Krishna is made of love, and love is unconditional, because love is not conditional. The very moment I say conditional love, it's an oxymoron. It's contradictory. No? The real nature of love is unconditional. So Krishna has unconditional love. No, he doesn't have. He's made of unconditional love in every possible direction. So where's the place for trying to struggle to gain his love and he already loves me. That's Krishna, many statements. I quote in one section of my book, I speak about unconditional love. And there are so many, I knew a few, but I started to do research and I was surprised, like so many sections in Shastra where Krishna's making, because sometimes we may think Krishna only loves his devotees and he's indifferent to everything else and everyone else. That can be a pretty dysfunctional scenario. I mean, you can feel, oh, I'm a devotee. Oof. Luckily you say like this only, no? But sometimes you're like, Krishna loves me because I'm a devotee. There are non-devotees, which is an expression that I don't like at all. But anyhow, but no, you go to the different parts of Shastra and Krishna is saying, I love everyone. Of course, he loves the devotees in a particular way because the devotees reciprocate. The conditioned soul is not yet reciprocating, but doesn't mean that Krishna is not loving them. It's like a mother. I gave you the example of a mother having a baby, and the baby has 3 hours being born. And in one sense, the baby is not yet aware, in one sense, I'm a baby, she's my mother. There's not like still yet an awareness of how to reciprocate in a conscious, voluntary way. It's more instinctual, you see.
It's not a set of rules.
But the mother already is aware. He's my baby. She loves the baby, even when the baby is not aware that he has a mother. But she loves him in a certain way according to his non-reciprocity. In time, the baby grows, becomes aware. There's something called mom. There is something called mom's love. And I'm the object of that love. And I feel driven to reciprocate. So at that moment, the mom was loving him all the way through. But the moment the child starts to reciprocate, the mom's love takes another shape to correspond to that love. So the same way I would say Krishna loves everyone and everything unconditionally from the very beginning. But with his devotees, that's expressed in a certain way because the devotees are reciprocating. So, but the point is, we are already being loved by Krishna. So there's no thing about I have to earn God's love. That's like kind of ridiculous, technically speaking. Because also you cannot earn God's love because God's love is too much to be deserved. I mean,
It's interesting though that we take God's love sometimes that's so freely available, actually. And we see our reciprocation with that as being sentimental or not enough, like, the child that falls down. I mean, I like the example where, the child falls when they're learning to walk and the mother doesn't even really think anything about it. Maybe they even laugh.
it adds to her love. Even.
Yeah, it's not something that they disown the child for or any of that kind of mentality.
No.
Yeah,
it increases her affection, actually.
Exactly.
Not to promote, let's make more mistakes so Krishna loves us more, but that's the nature of unconditional love.
Exactly.
So,
and we have that too.
Yeah. And it's very humbling, but it's sometimes so difficult to us to understand that because we love ourselves so little.
Exactly.
There's some deep ingrained shame and guilt in the very depths of our subconscious that we feel I'm completely unworthy, very ingrained beyond what we can realize. And with this, I'm not promoting some new age look at your mirror and say I'm beautiful and perfect and I love me and I'm all that. I'm not saying that. But you have to love yourself in the way. I like this phrase from St. John of the Cross. He says, love what God sees in you. No, when God is loving you and he sees something in you that is lovable. So learn to love that in yourself because God is loving that. It's not a selfish love, like, I love me, I'm so unique and special. It's not like a narcissistic absorption. It's like a humbling thing. No?
Can I jump in again?
You don't need to raise your hand, please.
I get too excited on things like this. But, the fact of the matter is that if you don't accept the love that's in your heart, you're denying Krishna. Like if Krishna's given you qualities and abilities or, something to share or a way to love or a way to give to others, and you discount that thinking you're not good enough or that, that it won't be accepted or any of these kinds of things, you're kind of denying Krishna. It is a matter of faith and conviction and, like you say, dynamicism.
Yeah, we're thinking that's another form of what we may call functional atheism. Some people say, I believe in God, but in functionality, you are denying him in so many ways. And one of them is denying the presence of his unconditional love in your own life, not allowing that to happen, not wanting to acknowledge that. And
who you are.
Yeah, and also there is something that comes to mind that is, to be unconditionally loved forever without deserving, of course, that's unconditional, means there's nothing I can do to deserve that. That's complicated because we are in a loop, in a deserving loop, in a meritocracy loop. Like I have to earn what I do this, I earn this, and then suddenly something comes that someone is loving you forever unconditionally, and that love is so incredible that no matter what you do, you are already loved, and no matter what you do, you will never deserve that. And that for the ego is a hard pill to swallow. Like, because generally we are accustomed to, I have to deserve stuff. So it requires the deepest humility to coexist with unconditional love, because it's coexisting with something that you will never deserve. And you have to be okay with that. Generally, we are not okay with that. And that's why we run towards the action, reaction, karma department, because we want to deserve some stuff. So I do that. Okay, I did that. That's my merit. But you are out of the loop of unconditional love. I mean, the conditional love is still there, but you lose sight of that. So that's, for me, an important point, because when we say Krishna loves you unconditionally, it sounds like cheap. Like, I have nothing to do. But for you to realize that, you have to invoke the highest humility to coexist with something that you will never deserve. Woo, there is a price to that. That's a higher price than remaining on the realm of karma, of deserving stuff by doing actions. That's a lower price. And that's a lower product, so to say, as well. Sorry.
I was just thinking on this note that it seems like the shame and guilt psychology is like particularly from unhealthy cultures, whereas I've met like in South America and in India, you know, people who have grown up with like stable communities who have just like stable sense of ego where there isn't too much pride and there also isn't too much shame. And I think like that's a huge part of the Sadhaka's path in the West, and having grown up in cultures where like there are all these ingrained kind of ego trips. So that's just kind of on this note. Can I share kind of a different question / thought?
Sorry again?
What is it? Can I share a different question / thought?
Apart from what you
Apart
share now?
from
Yeah,
this,
of course, yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it seems like what Jai Jagannath was sharing about, you know, grace and effort. I was thinking similarly about like the spectrum between liberalism and conservatism, and kind of that the Saragrahi has to like live or like straddle all these dualities simultaneously. All, you know, that's kind of what the Saragrahi does. It's like mercy, justice, grace, effort. And so I was thinking of the spectrum, which I feel like is very present for me, between like conservatism and liberalism. And so I feel like I'm naturally very attracted to, you know, your messaging, which is like, at least in the way that it's being spoken now, is on the liberal end, more so than, and that seems very natural to me. But I was wondering what you think about like, yeah, how to actually stay in the middle, where liberalism also too much of freedom, which I find for myself becomes an obstacle, in that I don't give myself in my spiritual practice like enough structure to contain the substance that I seek for, you know. So yeah, just kind of like, what's that dance of also zooming away from the liberalism, maybe when it comes to practice or like regulations, and I don't know if that makes sense, but like what that dance kind of looks like.
Yeah, well, it will looks very different to each one. Each one of us will be dancing a very different tune. No, we may be all in the same dancing hall, but there will be a different dancing dynamics, because again, we are very unique individuals in different chapters of our journey. So I totally agree with your point that someone may require a certain dose, so to say, of a structure that other people will find suffocating. But it doesn't mean that one is wrong, the other is right. It means that each one of them require very specific treatment, so to say, because again, at the end of the day, the bhakti journey is a totally individualized, specific journey. It's not like, okay, all of you have to fit into this box. This should work for every one of you. Like we were talking, I remember in Kali that Jai Jagannath was mentioning in his seminar on prayer life, and we were talking that some people will attain perfection by a particular anga of bhakti, and some person will attain perfection by another anga of bhakti, and some people will be inspired to address that same anga in it from a different place, and there is place for all that. It's not that you are speculating and creating your own hodgepodge or something. So, and again, that requires introspection, because there's no universal answer to how to deal with that dance, which is the ideal balance, an ideal percentage of structure for all the devotees? There's no reply to that question, because all devotees are in completely different constellations in one sense. I mean, we are ideally aligned with the same constellation, but at the same time, each one is in their own journey. So that requires introspection and very individualized following. But of course, I'm not saying here, let's throw the rules out of the window or anything like that in the name of Raga Bhakti or anything. but rules are necessary. I remember the other day we opened this Facebook group some weeks ago, and there are some rules in the group, rules of engagement, and someone mentioned that he didn't feel comfortable with the word rule because that triggered something. I mean, every person, again, I say rule, and to each one of you it means something different. And the idea, and I understand, but my point was, like, for me, rule is more like, let's play a game. So if we play a game, the game has to have rules. If not, there's no fun, there's no game. The ultimate reality is a game. It's lila, play. And any play has rules. So even lila, which is the realm of the ultimate freedom, has to have some rules for it to work. No? So I prefer to address rules from that place, like something not constricting, but facilitating.
Yeah.
A rule facilitates the game. If I start to play chess with you, and I don't know how to play chess to begin with, but let's just say I start to move the pieces to any place that is not legal according to the rules of the game, you're like, what are you doing, Maharaj? We are not playing. This is nonsense. We cannot do that. Follow the rules. And I won't tell you, oh, you are too much of a Vaidhi Bhakta. No, follow the rules. No. Let's play. Raga Bhakti is all about play, but it has its own rules. So yeah, there are degrees of rules. There are degrees of even conceiving the same rules. Like I was talking with, and I mentioned that in my book, but I remember we were talking with Namrasa some years ago. For example, a classical, so to say, set of rules for the devotees will be, at least in day one, there's the day one magical formula, so to say. Of course, after day 2 or 5, you start to feel the need of expanding the magic. But one of the magical rules are 4 regulative principles. So one of them will be, do not eat meat. In time, you will realize, the principle is actually not about that. Principle is about being compassionate. And it's not only about being compassionate, but being non-violent, let's begin. Not only not eating meat, because I cannot stop eating meat, but I can be violent in so many other ways. So you start to realize, okay, the original understanding of this rule is getting expanded. It's not limited to what I eat, but how do I relate with everyone? It's not only about being non-violent, but it's about being loving. And it's not about being loving only, but it's about being as loving as I can. So then you reach to that point of, I have to be as loving as I would like to be as loving as I can. That's very different to do not eat meat. So it's the same rule, but you have kind of played out the implications of the rule, and that maybe took out years for that to happen. So I say this because sometimes we say, okay, we follow certain rules of structure, but the same rule and structure can take so many different meanings. It's not just, now I don't follow this rule and I follow this new rule. Sometimes you follow the same rule deeper and deeper and deeper. You find new meaning into your vows. I have to renew my sannyas vows every day and discover what means sannyas vow. I remember in my tectonic shift from a few months ago, I kind of met myself with a new meaning of being a sannyasi, because I realized, okay, the main quality that Shastra mentions about sannyasi is abhayatva, which means fearlessness. And I'm being thrown into liminal space 108%. So I have to be okay coexisting with the unknown. I don't have a clue what will happen tomorrow, and this will last for a while. It's clear. So, and that's the essence of sannyas. So I have to increase my sannyas vow by embracing liminality in this chapter of my life as never before. I'm becoming more of a sannyas. Again, for me, it was naturally, okay, I'm increasing my sinus. So anyhow, I will say that, no, like there are structures and there are rules, and at one point that rule will become maybe limiting and suffocating, and you need to break some rules to accept a higher rule, basically. That's what Krishna does in the Gita, where he breaks his vow of not participating in the battle to protect Arjuna. He broke a vow, but to keep a higher one. So sometimes that requires also, of course, criteria, what to do. But like someone say once, like, oh, someone who really followed nicely his vows can know when to break them. Again, I'm not promoting, but sometimes you need to break some vows to accept higher ones. Again, to have bigger ones. Don't cut my sentence and put that out of context and then say, but Padmanabha Swami is promoting. Anyhow, just some thoughts. Thank you for your question.
Well, you spoke about essence a lot, and that's what you're really talking about now. You keep using the word. When you're applying the rules or you're applying the long-term understanding, and you talked about 95% understanding and then resolving, getting down to the essence, you talked about that with radical. So, and liberal doesn't always mean lax.
I'm just speaking first.
Yeah. But I'm just pointing out that, Prabhupada used the word liberal a lot. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm crossing lines, but the word liberal is used a lot, by Vaishnavas.
Mm-hmm.
And the word broad-minded is used even more, describing the Mahatmas. So having that, and then, like you said, being able to see from all the varieties and different perspectives and being open to that and relishing that and enjoying that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and somehow always trying to thread a middle path, as bhakti is very much middle path. It's not about, again, rejecting, or like the Bhagavatam say, Nanirbhito natishakto bhakti yogasya siddhidha. Now you want to attain full siddhi in bhakti, you shouldn't be too attached nor too detached. One example of that, like not too much here, not because you go to one end of the spectrum, you end up being, if you become too liberal, you end up becoming, you go, oops, what I'm doing on the other side. So the extremes are always like unhealthy. So in that sense, we want like a synthesis, like trying to integrate, higher integration, basically. It's a constant level of integration. That's bhakti. It's not karma, it's not gyan, it's not accepting and enjoying and exploiting, it's not denying and rejecting, but it's like accepting and rejecting, but from another perspective. Like yesterday I was with Radha. I just forgot. Yeah, it was yesterday. I will share that again. Sorry. I had Radhanath Maharaj invited me to meet him, and he was generous enough to share with me like 4 hours. And he was telling at one point that Srila Prabhupada was with one devotee, and the devotee told him, Prabhupada, for you, I'm ready to renounce everything. Which is, again, it's nice that you say that to your guru. I'm ready to renounce everything for you. But Prabhupada felt there's something behind the words that needs further adjustments. And Prabhupada told him, the only thing you need to renounce is the idea that you need to renounce everything. You don't need to renounce everything. You only need to renounce the idea that you need to renounce everything. But actually, everything can be offered to Krishna. Now, connecting a little bit with you mentioned, Mukund, about having this situation, and I may feel embarrassed. But there's no need to, we may feel embarrassed if we do some embarrassing thing, and God will do it. But at the same time, our body is shouldn't be a source of embarrassment. Our body is potential paraphernalia to be offered in the service of Bhagavan. So even if I'm still using it in little embarrassing ways, the potential is there. So everything is sacred. As I mentioned in my book, like there's nothing profane. There's only sacred things or desecrated things. We may desecrate stuff, but everything is potentially sacred. So we shouldn't be ashamed of anything, because everything is a Shakti of Bhagavan. Everything is in his service. Tamal. Okay, Mahandrani.
Oh, you're somebody else.
No problem.
Just, when the talk came up about conservatives and liberals, I remember that definition that Chaitanya Charan, I don't know if you know who that is, the
Yeah.
spiritual scientist, he gave at a seminar here. He said conservatives are concerned with conservatives see what's good in a system and they're concerned with preserving it. And liberals see people being disadvantaged or left behind by some of the shortcomings in the system, and they want to rectify that.
Mhm.
So if the two could get together and
Mhm.
balance each other
Yeah.
out, then you'd have the ideal.
Mhm.
And on rules, I remember reading in a administrative handbook that rules are tools meant to ensure a certain outcome, and if they're not, or meant for a certain purpose. And if they're not, when they start not serving that purpose, that's when you bend them or break them.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
But the rule in of itself, I think we know that the rule in and of itself is not what the goal is. The goal is serving
Yeah.
some goal.
Yeah. That reminds me what Srila Prabhupada said to Achyutananda when they were like originally signing the papers of ISKCON, like officially making the legal structure, and there were so many rules that they had to be put in those papers. And he said, well, but at the end of the day, the main rule is this: ISKCON has to be ruled by love and trust. And if at some point this rule is no longer followed, all the effort we are making to create all this, that same effort we should put to deconstruct all that. So the real rule continues to be followed, love and trust. So the same point you mentioned, there are rules, but if those rules are not serving the real purpose, what's the purpose of those rules? No? So, thank you. Tamal?
No, I'm satisfied, thank you.
But you can be more satisfied.
Yeah.
And we can be more satisfied by hearing what
Project I'm hearing.
was behind your raising your hand.
It was
I'm
right.
trying to serve my mom.
Okay. Because I saw him raising the hand, but it was like, okay. Okay, thank you so much for raising that hand there. Okay, so I think we are on time, and maybe we can continue sharing informally, so it becomes too late to you. So thank you so much, Abhay, Prabhu, and the family, and everyone of you present here. Shri Gaur Nityananda ki jai, Shri Harinam Prabhu ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premananda Vancha Kalpataruvischa Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Hari Bol.